You know that feeling when your mind just won't quit? That little voice in your head that gets stuck on a loop, replaying the same thoughts over and over again? Well, today, we're not just going to talk about overthinking. We are going to figure out how to finally take back the controls.
I mean, seriously, does it? It's a feeling so many of us know. You're lying awake at night, replaying some conversation from 3 days ago. Or maybe you're just worrying about a future that hasn't even happened. It literally feels like your brain is a runaway train and you've got no brakes. But what if you could learn to find those brakes? Or even better, what if you could learn to actually steer the train? Let's figure it out.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll get to the bottom of the overthinking loop itself. Then we'll look at the real toll it takes on our well-being. After that, it's all about solutions. We're going to talk about rewiring your inner monologue for the long haul, learning some tricks to calm the noise in the moment, and finally, building up your mental fitness so this stuff doesn't take hold in the first place. You know, before you can fix any problem, you really have to understand it. So, let's start with the big question. Why? Why do our brains get stuck in these super frustrating, totally unproductive loops?
Okay, first things first. Overthinking, or what psychologists call rumination, it's not just thinking a lot. It's a very specific pattern where your mind gets stuck on replay, just looping the same, usually negative thoughts. This isn't productive problem solving. It's more like a mental hamster wheel. You're spinning and spinning, but you're not actually going anywhere. And it can seriously get in the way of just living.
So what does this actually feel like? Well, it starts with that repetitive thinking, but then it gets a boost from a negative bias, where your brain just defaults to the worst-case scenario. And that leads to the classic paralysis by analysis, right? Where you think so much about a decision that you just don't make one at all. And the most maddening part? Deep down, you know you're doing it. You can feel it happening, but you just can't seem to stop.
So where does all this come from? Well, the triggers are often things we can all relate to. Of course, high levels of stress and anxiety are huge culprits. But also, certain personality traits, like perfectionism, can make you way more likely to overthink because you're always trying to avoid any tiny mistake. High-pressure jobs, big family responsibilities, getting stuck on negative stuff from the past, or just a deep-down fear of failing, all of that can fuel this nonstop mental engine.
Now, you might be tempted to just brush off overthinking as, an annoying habit, but the research is really clear on this. When it becomes a regular thing, it takes a serious toll on both your mental and your physical health. Let's break down exactly why this is a cycle you really want to break. This is such a crucial distinction. See, productive thinking is your friend. It has a goal, solve the problem, it's focused on action, and it leads to clarity and decisions. Overthinking is the total opposite. Its goal isn't to solve anything, it's just to chew on the problem over and over. It's totally passive, it's circular, and the only real outcome is more anxiety and the feeling of being completely paralyzed. And the damage it causes? It's pretty widespread. Mentally, constant overthinking is a known pathway to anxiety and even depression. Physically, all that stress can cause insomnia, tension headaches, and it can even weaken your immune system. And in your day-to-day life, it just kills your productivity and can put a huge strain on your relationships. The main point here is, this isn't something you can just ignore or power through. Okay, so we know what it is, and we know why it's bad for us. But here's the good news, and it's really good news. You can change it. So in this section, let's get into some powerful, long-term strategies you can use to actually rewire the way you think.
I love this quote because it just nails the core idea. It's all about two things: interruption and replacement. The second you break that negative cycle, you open up a little window of opportunity, a chance to bring in a new, more helpful, more supportive inner voice.
Now, let's be super clear about what we're aiming for here. This is not about toxic positivity or forcing yourself to just think positive. No. The real effective goal, which comes from an approach called cognitive behavioral therapy, is to aim for balanced and realistic thinking. It's about looking at the actual, hard evidence, not just the scary stories your mind is making up.
So the fuel for all this overthinking is something called cognitive distortions. That's just a fancy term for faulty thinking patterns that we all fall for. Like, for example, catastrophizing. That's when you automatically assume the absolute worst-case scenario. Or overgeneralization, where you take one bad thing that happened and turn it into a never-ending pattern of defeat. And then there's personalization, which is when you blame yourself for stuff that is completely out of your control. Just recognizing these is a huge first step.
So how do you actually fight these things? With a really cool technique called reframing. It's a simple 4-step process. First, you catch the negative thought as it's happening. Second, you challenge it like a detective. Okay, what's the actual evidence for this thought? And what's the evidence against it? Third, you come up with a more balanced, realistic alternative. And fourth, and this part is key, you take one small action that proves that new, healthier thought is true.
A fantastic way to practice this is with a 5-minute journaling exercise. It literally just walks you through that same reframing process, but putting it on paper can make it feel so much more real. You just describe the situation, jot down the negative thoughts that pop up, and then you play detective with the evidence. From there, you write out a new, more balanced thought. And then, this is important, you take a second to notice how that new perspective actually makes you feel.
All right, so those cognitive strategies are amazing for long-term change, but what about right now? What do you do when your mind is racing and you need some relief in this exact moment? Well, that's what this section is all about.
When you are caught in one of those overthinking spirals, the absolute #1 job is to interrupt the pattern. The whole goal is to kind of jolt your brain out of that repetitive loop and pull all of your attention back to the present moment, away from all the worries about the past or the future.
And here are some incredibly simple but shockingly effective ways to do that. You could try just 60 seconds of mindfulness, focusing only on your breath going in and out. Or a grounding technique, like the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Name 5 things you see, 4 you can feel, 3 you can hear. Even a healthy distraction, like putting on your favorite song or working on a puzzle, works wonders. And seriously, never underestimate the power of moving your body. Even a quick walk around the block can change everything.
Now, if you need something a little more forceful to break the cycle, you can try something called the stop technique. It involves a little physical signal, like snapping a rubber band on your wrist, while you mentally yell, "Stop." The key, though, is to then immediately replace that intrusive thought with a calming affirmation you've prepared ahead of time, like, "I am safe and I can handle this." Okay, we've covered long-term strategies and we've covered in-the-moment tactics. Now for our final piece of the puzzle, building the foundation. This is all about creating a lifestyle and a mindset that makes you way more resilient to overthinking in the first place. Think of it like preventative care for your brain.
Look, this isn't going to be rocket science, but these things are absolutely fundamental. Prioritizing good quality sleep, that's just non-negotiable for a calm mind. What you eat has a direct impact on how your brain works. Taking intentional breaks from the constant flood of news and social media gives your mind a chance to breathe. And making a point to celebrate your small wins every single day builds up your self-esteem, which is like a powerful shield against that inner critic that fuels overthinking.
And as we start to wrap up, it is so important to say this. All of these self-help tools we've talked about are incredibly powerful, but if overthinking is seriously getting in the way of your life, reaching out for professional help is one of the strongest, bravest, and smartest things you can possibly do. A good therapist or counselor can give you personalized tools and support that can make all the difference.
So that brings us to the end. We've dug into what overthinking is, the real toll it can take, and a whole toolkit of strategies to fight back. The question now is, for you, looking at everything we've just covered, what is one small, totally doable step you will take today to start quieting the noise? Thanks so much for joining me.